The blind man came to the edge of the sidewalk and stopped. His right hand prodded with his cane, his ears searching for the sounds of cars. He wanted to cross Ocean Boulevard, but this was a dangerous proposition for a blind man, so he stood, prodding with his cane, hoping a kind soul might see him and help him cross.
You want to cross the road, sir?
The voice brought great relief to his ear. It was female, young, maybe 20 or 21. She wanted to help him, but she was in a bit of a hurry. He could tell these things without asking. A sixth sense blindness had given in exchange for his sight, but this was not a fair exchange.
Yes, sweet girl, if it's not too much. I would like to go sit on the waterfront a while.
She was a small-bodied girl with amiable character traits. She had a small face with unusually large eyes. She was generally mannerly and possessed that quality which Jamaicans call a good heart. The blind man switched his cane to his left hand. The young lady held up her right hand in the air now, signalling to traffic that she intended to cross. Then, with her handbag over her shoulder, she gently held on to the blind man's right hand and crossed, then stopping at the median, looked the other way before crossing the second half of the divided roadway. Now, they were at the edge of the waterfront with lovely carpet-like grass underfoot. The waterfront, with its scenic glory, was a haven for lovers.
I sense you are in a bit of a rush, but I would like to say something to you. It would take just 5 minutes,
the blind man said, in an anxious tone. She was hesitant, thinking a bit, then turned her hand over to look at the time on her wristwatch.
I think I have 5 minutes to spare,
she said tenderly. Perhaps too loving, perhaps too kind, perhaps fearing to hurt one she thought so vulnerable, so she did not bother to tell him she had 30 minutes before an interview, during which time she had planned to reinforce potential answers in her mind.
Sweet girl, do you see a concrete chair under a tree with a section of its bark shaped like a heart?
The blind man asked gently. Her eyes searched, but she was distracted momentarily by a huge wave which slammed into the concrete wall at the edge of the sea.
Yes,
she said finally.
I see it, sir.
Sit me down there, please.
He sat down and she sat beside him, glancing at her watch again. Then the blind man asked the strangest question.
Do you have a mother, sweet girl?
Puzzled by the question, Jillian smiled awkwardly, then answered.
Yes, I do indeed. My mother is Haitian and my father is Jamaican. I guess you could say I'm Jamhaitian.
If this were an attempt to make the blind man smile, it didn't work. For if anything, he grew dangerously sad and angry at the same time, and words now fell heavy from his sad, angry lips.
My mother abandoned me because I was born blind. She migrated almost immediately after I was born, and she didn't look back at all. It was as if I was never born. It was as if I was a nobody. How can a woman forget her own child like that? It has bothered me all my life.
He shook his head desperately, then said again,
It has bothered me all my life.
At that point his voice broke and became a whisper. Jillian felt sadness overcoming her as she listened to the blind man's story.
You see, my mother had me when she was 15 years old and my father was 16. 2 school children in their school uniforms, driven by biology, stole away to this place one evening. And they made me right here, at this very point. One day my father was mad because I accidentally knocked his TV off its stand and broke it. Later I heard him telling his friend that I was unplanned for and unwanted, and that I was a mistake, and that was why my life was the way it was. He told him I was made right here.
Jillian fidgeted uncomfortably as the words,
My goodness,
emitted from her lips as she listened on.
Nobody wanted me,
the blind man continued.
At one time I was with my grandmother, at one time I was with an aunt, another time I was with my father, then in a home for the blind, then with another aunt. It became worse than that, because when my aunt was tired of me, she found my mother's family, got a number, called her and asked her to take me. My mother plainly said she wanted nothing to do with me. You see, she was married now and living in the USA.
Then a change came to the blind man's face. A calmness, a relaxation of the features, a resolution confirmed. He spoke softly and confidently now. The bitterness had dissolved.
They have chosen not to love me, and I have chosen to become a salmon. I will become a salmon, I say.
Now Jillian glanced at her watch, panicking. It was almost time for her interview. She abruptly stood up and said,
"Stay until I get back."
She spoke lovingly. For one must speak lovingly to a man who had undergone such grave injustices. As she was leaving, she turned around again and gently said,
"I am going to help you, sir. Just wait until I return."
You are one of the good ones. May God reward you for your kindness.
The blind man shouted at Jillian as she walked away.
Live forever, sweet girl.
She felt what she thought was the beginning of a tear, and she spoke to herself, as she always did in emotional times like these. Come now, Jillian, you are on your way to an interview. If the interview was too short or too long, then you haven't gotten the job, but if it's in between, you got the job, baby girl. Her mother had told her this morning, in that sweet semi-Haitian/Jamaican accent of hers. Her mother had left Haiti in a rickety old boat with her own mother attempting to reach Florida, but they ended up in Portland, Jamaica, where they were allowed to stay. Eventually, she found her way to Kingston, where she now operated her own small business from home. Well, the interview wasn't too short or too long, Jillian thought, remembering her mother's hypothesis, and now thought it was all up to the Lord. And then her mind swept suddenly to the blind man. She started walking briskly, then broke into a run, for she suddenly remembered he had mentioned something about becoming a salmon. The blind man had returned to the place where his conception had commenced, and Jillian knew a salmon would return to its spawning ground, and then... It was now that the words were hitting her and making certain suggestions to her. But it couldn't be, she thought. He couldn't really mean that. Then she saw groups of people on the waterfront speaking slowly and quietly. She read the gloom and knew they spoke of death.
The blind man walked in the wrong direction and fell into the sea,
A tall Rasta man said, and a young Indian boy who had been fishing at the time confirmed it. They had both called out to him, but it appeared he didn't hear, and so he fell into the sea, and he couldn't be saved in time, they said. Jillian was running away now. She had been a fool. They could talk all they wanted. She knew what had happened, and she knew who was to be blamed. She turned onto King Street and ran. When she was tired, she stopped, and then ran again until she was at Parade waiting to jump into a taxi. She had to get home, away from this bad dream, a bad dream in which she had led a man to his death. Jillian rushed past her mother in the yard. She rushed to the living room and fell like a log on the couch, crying. Then her mother rushed in behind her, frightened.
What happened, Jilly?
Her mother's heart was almost audible as it throbbed in her chest.
Is it because you did not get the job, Jilly?
Jillian began to say something, but her crying made it inaudible. Mother and daughter sat beside each other, and the daughter's tears were now rolling down the mother's neck and wetting the mother's blouse. And now the mother rubbed the daughter's back, gently, reassuringly. Finally, she heard Jillian say,
"I killed a man, Mommy."
You did what?
A shriek from the mother.
"It's not exactly like that."
Then she proceeded to tell her mother how the events had unfolded.
So you see, darling, you didn't actually see him do it. You need to stop beating up yourself. Go into your room, lie down and get some rest.
The 7 p.m. news was on television, and Jillian and her mother were watching. They wanted to see if any news about the blind man's death would be aired. A 40-year-old blind man, Henry Cross, inadvertently walked into the sea on the waterfront in downtown Kingston today, the news said. Jillian's mother turned to her.
See, Jilly, you had nothing to do with it. You have been tormenting yourself for nothing. Here they said he had lost his bearings and walked into the sea.
Jillian said nothing. Only she knew what had happened, and she promised herself to never speak about the incident again. But she knew only one proper thing was left to be done, and she was going to do it. She didn't tell her mother that a lady had called earlier to say she had gotten the job and that she had rejected it. She would seek a part-time job instead, because there was something very important to do. The next day, Jillian took a taxi and came off at Crossroads. She was going to the Society for the Upliftment of the Blind. She timidly walked into the office. There was a young man sitting at a desk, and he stood up when she entered. His name was Andrew Scott. He was tall, light-skinned, and blind. He seemed a little shy to Jillian. On another day, Jillian would have thought that he was handsome, but today was not the day for that. She had come on business. She had a wrong to correct. It was her life that she had come here to pledge, and she told Andrew so. Yes, he seemed shy to Jillian, but when he spoke, he sent confidence through the room, and she thought if things had been different, he might have been a leader of men. He had just taken over. In fact, this was his first week, and he planned to overhaul the operations, and he could do well with any help, he said. And with that said, and an exchange of phone numbers, they parted, not knowing that 6 months from then, their lives would become intertwined, and that fate and faith would couple them together to propel them into a stunning new world. They could not have known that which was called love, in keeping with its nature, would bind them together and make them fight for each other in a way they could never have imagined.
I will not have it.
Rosaline Etienne shouted,
I rather die than see this. Imagine running away from a life of poverty in Haiti. Imagine seeking out a better life in a new land, giving all to your daughter and to hear she will marry a blind boy to keep us in poverty and distress. My mother turns in her grave now to see that the new generation has no ambition. You have wasted my time and my mother's time. Shame! Shame, Jillian Saunders!
Jillian's head bowed low. She thought her mother might have been disappointed, but she didn't expect this sort of reaction.
Remember I ran away from Haiti for a better life, Jillian. Remember that. I rather die than let this happen,
she shouted again. Then, from the shelves of her memory, Rosaline saw the face of Geneva Saunders in her mind's eye. The threatening, abominable face of Geneva Saunders, 18 years old, in a strange land, and having just given birth to twins. She looked into the face of a monster and heard her threaten innocent little babies. You refuse to leave my husband. They won't live past 20. You hear me? I will destroy them myself, Geneva had said. Now Rosaline shouted,
Voodoo! It's voodoo! For how else could this be explained? After having twins with a married man, the man's wife threatened to destroy the twins. The boy then suddenly becomes insane, wandering across Jamaica and then murdered by a mob in Westmoreland. And now the girl had made a vow to marry a blind boy. What madness is this?
She hissed her teeth, shrugged her shoulders, and sighed loudly.
Voodoo!
Rosaline shouted again.
I will fix this,
she said resolutely.
Geneva Saunders, you are a bitch. You are trying to destroy me and my children. You killed my son with voodoo. You are an obeah worker. Come out here now.
The sophisticated New Kingston crowd heard the bullhorn blaring in the Monday morning heat. Some people continued with their business, but others wanted to see who had brought this loud, ghetto vulgarity to New Kingston. And of course they wanted to see who it was directed at. Someone must have rushed in to tell Geneva Saunders what was happening outside, because there she was now, bent over against her work desk, crying, as a staff member rubbed her back and other staff members stood around to comfort and support their manager.
Move on now, lady.
A police officer cried out firmly from his service vehicle, which had stopped close to Rosaline Etienne on Knutsford Boulevard. She moved on, but thought to herself, Geneva Saunders can run, but she can't hide. There was a fight in the parking lot. Mrs. Saunders was being attacked. "Call the police!" someone shouted. But before the police came, 2 men had come to restrain the attacker as she shouted,
Voodoo working, bitch!
Mrs. Saunders, with her bleeding head, was being taken to the hospital, and Rosaline Etienne, kicking like a mule, was being taken to jail. Rosaline Etienne knew some judges were inclined to send the defendant to prison, but there were others who were apt to impose a fine. She hoped to stand before the latter today. The judge was a big, stern woman with aging skin and an intimidating gaze. She fixed that gaze on Rosaline Etienne now.
You have been charged with a serious crime, Miss Etienne. How do you plead?
Your Honor, I want to say that I revere the court and the law. I revere you too, Your Honor, and that is why I will refuse to waste the court's time and honestly tell you now that I am guilty with a very special explanation.
Special explanation, eh?
The judge said.
What explanation could I accept seeing you caused serious harm to Geneva Saunders' head?
Your Honor, she worked voodoo on my children.
The court laughed. The judge shifted in her big chair.
My court is one of law and not one of fantasies, lady.
Your Honor, you see, I became pregnant by her husband, and she found out, and because she couldn't get kids, she became jealous and promised she would kill my children.
Now the judge turned to Geneva Saunders.
Now this is a serious accusation. Did you threaten to murder this woman's children?
I did, Your Honor.
Now an uproar in the court.
Order!
The judge said firmly.
I did because she was a home wrecker, and she was stealing my husband from me. The twins did not get a chance to become familiar with my husband as he died from a heart attack a year after they were born. I realized the children were all I had left of him. If you understand what I mean, Your Honor. My soul grew restless, and when they were about 5 years old, I drove past their home with my windows up just to get a glimpse of the children, and I saw O'Neill, the son, and he was the spitting image of my husband. The way he stood, the way he gesticulated, and his very form, and I realized they were all I had left of him, as I said before, so I decided to help them from a distance. It was I who secretly paid the daughter's tuition fee for her 3 years at university by giving an anonymous scholarship. And even when O'Neill became ill, I travelled miles to find him and give him food. 2 times I got him abducted to get help for him, which sadly did not work.
Rosaline had started to sob. Then she was crying loudly in the courtroom. She asked,
Can this be really true?
Then loudly she said,
I am the bitch.
Now the judge rebuked her.
You are in enough problems as it stands. Why do you think you can use such language in my courtroom? You don't realize you might go to prison today?
And at that point, some form of noise escaped Jillian's mouth. It just sprang out without her input. It was the sound of fear.
I'm going to beg you not to send her to prison, Your Honor. In her mind, she was fighting for her children because even animals do so.
Geneva said.
Oh, I see.
The judge said, seeming to think. Then,
Rosaline Etienne, you are sentenced to 1 year's imprisonment or a fine of $400,000.
Jillian was happy and Rosaline was happy, but then they suddenly realized they didn't have enough money to pay the fine. Rosaline quietly and fearfully said,
I humbly beg the court time to pay the fine, Your Honor.
The fine will be paid forthwith, or 12 months' imprisonment, madam.
Now despair and crying, until Geneva reached into her purse and handed the money to Jillian and said,
Go pay it.
A little later, Rosaline was telling Geneva,
I'm genuinely ashamed. Genuinely ashamed. Please forgive me. I just didn't know these things. I will do anything for you. Anything you ask because I owe you so much.
Jillian has whispered something to me, so since you say you will do anything for me, then let Jillian marry who she wants. She is a grown woman.
Now silence. Rosaline's mouth opened and it took a very long time to close, and still she said nothing. She couldn't do it. She just couldn't do it. She would need to unlearn all she had learnt over the years. Having fled poverty in Haiti at 15 years old, and having a mother who all her life had told her that every move she made should be to ensure she stepped away from poverty forever, and now to be asked to give blessings to a man who must be the provider and protector of her daughter, a man who could not see. What will he provide? How will he provide? How will he protect? Nonsense. We might as well return to Haiti. And at the end of that thought, she decided once and for all that she would not give her blessings to that marriage, and if they went ahead with it, she would not attend. And furthermore, any children born of that union would not be her grandchildren. Jillian wanted to have her own way, and it would not work. As Rosaline rolled over these thoughts in her head, her lips moved at times, her hands moved at times, because the emotions were ripe. No mother should have the right to tell a child who she could or could not marry. So, Geneva was going to help Jillian to marry. It was the right thing to do. She didn't want any problem, but since Jillian had asked for help, she was going to give it. She advised Jillian not to have a large wedding. They should first build themselves financially, and maybe one day they could have a large celebration, but not now. Jillian got married on her 21st birthday. The wedding took place at the Registrar General's Department in Twickenham Park, Spanish Town. There was no fanfare at all. Later that night, the newlyweds were at Mrs. Saunders' house. They had been invited over to chill a bit and to have a few drinks. After a bit of wine, Mrs. Saunders announced that she had a special gift for Jillian. She gave Jillian a package wrapped up like a gift. Jillian unwrapped it to find 2 documents.
Look at them.
Mrs. Saunders said excitedly.
I took out those policies when you were 5 years old. They have now become payable on your 21st birthday. The policy is for $15 million. Your brother's policy will become payable to you also.
Excitement, as Jillian and Andrew were holding each other hands and jumping up and down in the air like little children. She next ran to Mrs. Saunders, kissed her on her cheek, and then hugged wildly and tightly.
You are one of the good ones,
Jillian whispered in her ear. Jillian thought of calling her mother to tell her the good news, but then she changed her mind. Her mother had abandoned her on her most special day, and she was very angry with her. Meanwhile, Rosaline's mind was churning. So, she had wanted to kill my daughter, and now she wants to steal her from me. After I bring her to where she is, this woman wants to steal my daughter from me, because she is a mule. She took my daughter and marry her off to a blind boy to keep us poor. Look how all of a sudden Jillian has become disobedient and rebellious. What has caused this? Up and gone and marry a blind boy. But Rosaline was still wondering what was happening with Jillian now, as these thoughts coursed through her mind. The newlyweds would live at Andrew's parents' home. Jillian was doing a part-time job where she worked 5 hours a day at a bank. The rest of the day she committed to the welfare of the blind and the mentally challenged.
You should take the $30 million and buy a house, Jilly.
Her husband, Andrew, said.
Hon.
She responded,
I will take half of this money and place it in an account. The other half is to help to pay the psychologist I've wanted to employ. Hon, trust your wife. The blind need counselling too. Many are suffering every day in their minds.
She spoke respectfully because this was her husband and the leader in the home.
Hon, I'm insisting this money be used to buy our home. We may soon start a family. We are being given a great chance to have our home without 30 years of oppressive and slavish mortgage payments. You need to do this.
Now there was a suggestion of anger in his voice. Jillian read this. She wouldn't be angry, though, but she now started to sound stern.
I rather live in a doghouse and provide the necessary finances for the counselling the blind needs. Full stop.
Andrew's brain registered this as insolence. Now she saw him fumble his way into the bedroom, and she heard when the door shut hard. In a way, she felt sorry for him because he was the leader, and here He was being assigned a subordinate role in this matter. But it had to be like this, she said to herself now, while thinking about what had just transpired. It just had to. In the very first week of marriage, the new couple had their first argument. Needless to say, many more would come after this, because it was the inherent nature of the institution called marriage. They knew this before, and they still desired marriage, for they said they had a God to account to. Mrs. Saunders told Jillian to be the bigger person, to bring her baby to see her mother and to end the foolish malice once and for all.
Can he see? Is he blind?
Rosaline asked impatiently.
Yes, he can see, Mommy.
Upon hearing this, Rosaline kissed him on his cheek and made him swing through the air a little. She placed her index finger on his belly and made funny noises. Rosaline had become a child again.
You will bring him again next Saturday?
She asked eagerly.
I will, Mummy, I will,
Jillian said. When they were leaving, Rosaline said,
Andrew?
Which meant she wanted Andrew's attention. She came, stood before him, and shook his hand but said nothing. But she did not need to say anything because the shaking of a hand said a lot. It was the 2025 Prime Minister's Youth Awards. The host was speaking. He was now introducing the main awardee.
She has won the Prime Minister's Award of Excellence for her selfless work with the blind and the mentally unstable. Her name is Jillian Saunders Scott. She is a 23-year-old Jamaican with Haitian heritage. She has demonstrated an undiluted commitment to the blind and mentally challenged. Along with her husband, she runs a successful export and import business, while at the same time championing the rights of the deprived in our society. Help me welcome Mrs. Jillian Saunders Scott,
the host said. Mrs. Jillian Saunders Scott was ushered slowly to the podium by two blind men, without their canes. Instead, they had flags in their hands. One had a Jamaican flag, and the other a Haitian flag. Jillian walked in the centre and held onto the men's free hand. They waved their flags triumphantly, as if they were celebrating some sort of victory. But the crowd waited patiently, for there was a point being made here, and the crowd recognized and accepted this special moment. The point being made was that these blind men were somebody. They had value, and they had stories just like everybody else. The crowd lapped it up, they shouted, they whistled, while waiting patiently because they thirsted for her speech.
I must tell you that I'm wholly Jamaican, but I'm better defined as a Jam Haitian. I have a Haitian mother and a Jamaican father. I want the world to know I proudly claim and assert my Haitian heritage. The Haitians are a proud and magnificent people, but largely despised without good reason. I want to admit that many persons have aided in this glorious work, to lift up the blind and visually challenged people of Jamaica, to help the mentally challenged, in general to bring good things to humanity. I want to thank the Prime Minister, in whose honour this award is given. I thank my husband. Without him, I would fail miserably. What about a mother who has stood with me and fought for me all my life? I say thanks to you, Mommy. Mommy, this is your moment too.
Jillian smiled, and Rosaline Etienne in the crowd smiled and stood up. And then she gently held onto the arm of Mrs. Geneva Saunders and gently pulled her up to stand beside her. Rosaline extended her hand around Geneva's back and softly pulled her onto her own body, smiled and shook her head in satisfaction. Now Jillian smiled and said,
It's your moment too, Mrs. Saunders. Thank you, ma'am.
Then Jillian continued,
I want to thank Corporate Jamaica for standing tall for Jamaica. I also want you to know that I've worked in concert with the World Blind Union, and without them the blind would not have been so significantly affected. But most importantly, I thank the big man upstairs. Without his direction and guidance, we would utterly fail. Last Sunday, a rickety boat arrived at Manchionial in Portland with 20 Haitians on board. Will we send them back? Are we that type of people? Will we send them back to poverty and distress and possible death? This behaviour would contradict who we are, being ourselves, people of adventure and love. We are inseparably connected. We are one people. Honourable Prime Minister, I appeal to you. Save them, please, sir. My own mother came in one such boat, and I will say I have affected Jamaica for its good. Never has so much awareness brought to the plight of the blind. I, along with the help of others, have carved out long-term and substantial partnerships with corporate Jamaica. Let us not forget that I've also fought for mental health awareness, because my own twin brother was mentally challenged, and instead of attempting to save him, men murdered him in Westmoreland as he wandered away. Jamaica, let us stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. Well-thinking Jamaicans, come partner with me, and let us do beautiful things for the blind and the mentally challenged. I'm closing now, but I want to speak to the Honourable Prime Minister. Honourable Prime Minister, I will be bold and ask you upon this moment to intervene in this matter with the arriving Haitians. Honourable Prime Minister, I will be audacious to tell Jamaica that you will allow these children of God to abide in this blessed land of Jamaica. I say so because this is in keeping with the man you have shown yourself to be. Macy Ann Pill.
The people leapt to their feet, clapping vigorously for the heroine. The Prime Minister came to the podium half an hour later to announce that the Haitians would be allowed to stay in Jamaica, and the crowd stood up again and clapped violently. You are a beast. A woman like you should not have been born. Even a violent crocodile looks after its young. A yardfowl clucks and attacks anything that approaches its young, and you found it in yourself to just drop out a human being and forget him. You are wretch and a vagabond. Jillian was rehearsing what she would say to Carleen Stewart when she would meet with her in half an hour. Jillian had come to New York to attend a conference. She had gotten a number for Carleen Stewart, the mother of the blind man, and had arranged to meet with her in a diner. As Jillian was about to enter the diner, she was thinking that she was going to beat her bad with words. Carleen Stewart was sitting around a table in the diner, her head hung low. She seemed defeated, old and desolate, like an empire that had fallen into ruins. She was alone and unloved. She lifted her head, and the vacant stare of the blind was exposed. Jillian, shocked, asked,
Carleen?
You can say justice has visited me. Diabetes blinded me. I didn't even know I had it.
Carleen said slowly, wearily.
How could you abandon your child like that, lady?
Jillian asked firmly.
I was married very young, and my husband...
She seemed to want to cry. Then after a sniffle and the rising and falling of the shoulders, she continued.
He wanted no kids around. He said if I brought any kids around, he would leave me.
Carleen muttered. Now Jillian was becoming angry.
You let a man make you desert your own flesh and blood.
I'm ashamed,
Carleen said, crying now. Full-blown crying now. And then she stopped suddenly, because she thought she might draw the attention of the patrons in the diner.
And to think
She continued.
To think that after all I did for him, he left me for a woman half my age. A child, really. I hope God punish him for how he treated me. You think God will show me mercy?
She asked next, exhibiting a troubling worry. Carleen searched for Jillian's hands and found them resting on the table. She held them sharply and firmly, then said,
Tell me God will forgive me. Tell me so, lady.
But Jillian was in no mood to say any such thing. She was angry with her. She pulled her hands away from her grasp, took a pen and a piece of paper from her bag, wrote down a name and a number. She then handed the paper to Carleen and said,
Get someone to call this person. She works with the blind. She will offer you food, etc. Take care, lady.
Carleen thanked her and asked again,
Do you think God will forgive me? Say something, miss.
But Jillian said nothing. She turned and left the diner, for she had a plane to catch to Jamaica. So, they were right all along, Jillian thought. And then,
They were right all along.
the words came out now as she viewed the images on her phone. After such a long time, a video had emerged on the internet of the actual point when Henry fell into the sea. It seemed to be from a surveillance camera from one of the high-rise buildings in the area. She used forefinger and thumb to enlarge the images for the umpteenth time. They were right all along. She thought again. But why was he so particular to go back to the point where his conception had commenced? And what did he mean when he said he would become a salmon? Then it hit her. He wanted to reset his life by going back to where it had started. It meant he would swim upstream. He would fight to become a success, despite the hand life and circumstances had dealt him. She had badly misread the events, but how strange it was that the mistaken conclusion of the incident on the waterfront had created this life for her. The false conclusion had given her a perfect husband and an angel for a son. It had beautified her personality and had given her a proper purpose in life. But she was crying now. Maybe because she saw the actual moment he stepped into eternity, or maybe because she saw it did not happen as she had thought. She didn't try to stop herself from crying as she usually did. Maybe she couldn't. Torrents fell from her large eyes, and they fell on the sheet as she knelt by the bedside. Now, her husband, who was sitting in the living room, heard sounds and called out,
Hon, you crying or something?
No answer at first, but then she thought to tell a lie. An indiscretion they had both agreed should never be a part of their marriage. But those who are married the longest would confess that not all truths should be spoken in a marriage. She said,
Belly issues, honey. It's that time.
The answer satisfied Andrew. He said,
Maybe you should take a stronger dose of the pills, honey.
Jillian was thinking again. A man who had suffered so much abandonment in life and yet found it in himself to reset. To say no matter how late it was in life, he was still determined to swim upstream, against the tide, to fight, to find success, regardless of the hand life had thrown at him. She was berating herself now to have foolishly thought he had wanted to self-harm, when he really had determined in his mind to soar. She would tell the world about him now. Without doubt, such a man should be honoured. Jillian would start by going to Halifax, St. Mary, tomorrow. She would find Henry's grave and get it cleaned up, and then she would get a proper headstone for it. She would do this for the man who was meant to be a salmon.